Can we settle in, take our seats? We'd like to get started. If you'd please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was looking to see who elected officials are here today. I see Jackie is with us. Good morning, Jackie. Yeah. Representative, oh, thank you for coming. I think we'd like to get right in to the program as quickly as possible. So I'm going to ask Merritt to come up and introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Charles. Charles is filling in for Mark, who's absent today. I'm Merritt Matheson, the Vice President of Indian River Keeper. Some of you may remember me as the former mayor of the city of Stewart. Today, we're lucky enough to have Lieutenant Colonel Todd Polk here. He's the Deputy District Commander of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Jacksonville District. So he's overseeing almost day-to-day operations with an excellent team under him. He's going to give us an update on post-Hurricane Nicole, kind of how they're looking and their assessments. That hurricane threw them a little bit of a loop, that last minute storm as we transition into the dry season here, and then kind of an update on projects that the Corps is working on that'll hopefully solidify our desired future of zero discharges to St. Lucie Estuary. So anyway, without further ado, Lieutenant Colonel Polk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great order, he's starting.
Mayor, thank you, everyone. I'll put this here so can you all hear me okay? About it. And I know I've got Tim Geisner out there online. He's one of my lifelines. From the details on LOSOM. He's been I think all of you know Tim Geisner well. He's been working the LOSOM effort since the start for over 3 years now. So you have to go to him. Definitely will. But appreciate it. Hey, I will tell you right off the bat, I think prior to Nicole, I could have told you today, we have a firm dry season strategy and we're ready to move forward with it. And I could give you all that, but Nicole it threw us for a loop, right? We fortunately was on the lower end of the spectrum as far as what we saw from rainfall, as opposed to the 4 to 5+ inches over the lake and in the basin.
Army Corps guy.
You can go ahead. Hey, thank you. Good. Next slider, if I can get it. So bottom line, where we had topped out, below, we had just reached that crest on the peak, and you'll see that in just a second. Today we're at 16.25 feet, 16.25. I think what's important to note though is that we're slowing down. You'll see just from yesterday's number, we were 16.22, and the day before that was 16.21. So my point is, we're starting to see that peak on the lake, and that's important. That's one of the biggest things we've been waiting to see, and avoiding the fears and concerns of us going over 16.5 or even higher, right? So that was probably our biggest number one concern as Nicole came in, shortly after we all met last meeting, and the soothsayer John Mitnick told us, hey, the dry season's here, no more worries. So again, it threw us for a loop. Of course, we're concerned. We're close to the end, but let's make sure we get there. So a couple quick points. We're about 3.25 inches higher than we were last week. So like I said, it was still coming up, but I think we're slowing that down. We are about a foot over where we were last month. Last month, that's how much it's come up. It's a whole foot, 2.5 inches higher than we were last year on this date. And we're about 2.5 inches lower than we were 2 years ago. So I'll show that in a minute. Real quick, as we look at what's coming out east and west, so of course we have not released anything from the lake. So you're aware, for the past many days since prior to Nicole. We're seeing about 2,500 cubic feet per second going out of the S79. Locking it. So when we measure it, right, that's where low sum's going to put us now measuring to bring everybody back, right? The 79 is our West WP Franklin Lock and Dam, right? And that's what's coming right at the mouth of Caloosahatchee. Bring back up Ortona, and then the S77 though, right? So when we really want to measure what's coming off the lake, that's when we talk about the S77. Same thing for here on our side, right? On the east side. So the 308, everybody knows, right? That's Myaka, dam structure, and that's where we release. But 80 is right, sits right out here, and that's again that what you're seeing right now. That 249. I think today it was about 312 cubic feet per second. So definitely on the lower end, but that is really all that's doing is that's taking all of what we call again the basin, not just the tidal basin, but basin from this portion of Florida here, and that's allowing us just to keep the navigation, keeping the C-44 canal under 15.5 feet. Right? So that was a big concern when we were looking at Nicole as well, when we had quite a bit of releases and we had flooding on top of. I mean, the biggest thing I would tell you, it was that king tide, the storm surge coming in. That's what really caused that flooding. We really were never more than we are right now as far as releases from the S80 structure during the entire storm, that entire time. And again, that was to make sure that we were protecting the structures there actually at the day, because if you get above 15.5 feet in the canal, you'll start damaging things that we have on the lock, as well as further flooding back into Indiantown and so on. So we're that's really that's that threshold that's our top limit when it comes to where the canal can ever get to. So that's why we stay very cautious with the canal height at around 15 or 14 feet. Like I said, where we were at through the duration of Nicole. Inflow is the other big thing, right? So it's the other big indicator that we're looking at. What's coming into the lake from the north, right? So I think the number I have got this morning was 5,749 coming down in Kissimmee. We were at about, it was very high post Ian, of course. I mean, that was when we were draining down, as we talked last month, just an inordinate gush of water coming down. 4,000 is about what we were coming in as Ian slowed down, and then we went to Nicole. So again, we're still up there in that 5,000 range. And get back to that normal flow is around 4,000 cubic feet per second, and that's seeing everything coming in from the north. Again, look a little further south the system while we're talking it. Again, as you heard, Director Bartlett talk about last month, it's a very important. The STAs and for those protected, making sure they are ready to come online is extremely vital to the district right now. So don't have a lot of capacity. Again, a lot of that rain, as you know, it was way north in the Brevard, Volusia, Vero Beach north, and then there was quite a gush that came right through this region from Nicole. So it's full. Our water conservation areas are pretty much back on schedule. Water conservation area 3A is a bit higher right now, but not too far. And of course, we're still sending great numbers south into the park, and that's always important. That's where we want it to go. That's where it's saying, right? That is the ultimate goal. So let me go to our spaghetti model chart. Oh, there we go. So again, so let me step back and help re-explain this to everybody again, or not even but just bring everyone back in, right? So the shaded blue is where we're at this year, right? That's this year's from starting. It's not a water year, but by annual year, right? We got our foot marks here on the left, so up to 18, 17. Here they're at 16 feet right now. 15, 14, right, and below. And then the bands that you're seeing, our water management shortage band, which is where we were sitting literally not even 60 days ago, right as we were at probably one of the last governing board meetings that we had in Palm Beach there. That's right where we were struggling with, right? So that's all pre-Ian, and you see this 3-foot rise that we put on the lake so quickly. As we came in right in, of course, prior to Nicole. So that's where we've had. And I know it's tougher to see, but the light that we're seeing at the end of that tunnel is that it's a peak. It's a very slow. So I think we're getting to the peak. As long as we don't get too much more rain, and we do start to see a dry out, which is a great thing. Just to go back to make sure I got the right numbers. Yeah, back on September 29th, it was 13.65. So had us right below, right? 13, we were all concerned about October 1st being that, right there would have had us in the water shortage management ban. We thought we were going to be right there, but we got a little bit of rain. But then, of course, as we all know, Ian came across and just amped us up. So the other high curves you're seeing, right? So that was, it's 2017, as we all know, that's Irma, right? That's the big Irma curve. You know, ours is just about as steep this past year. I want to say, was that 2008? I want to say it's Wilma, I believe. That was that late storm Wilma, if I'm not mistaken. It came in late, some of these other steep rises. You can even go back to when we had Dorian and Humberto in 2019. Let me find it here. You know, and again, a fairly steep rise, but again, this is up there, right? So it put a lot on the lake. And why are we going there, right? Because so under the lures, right, we're sitting just below that intermediate band, which again, lures recommendations would be up to 3,000 cubic feet per second going west out of the S79 and 1,170 going east out of the S80. Again, but you see it right now, we're not doing either way because we're trying to make sure that we can hold back and see what's going on. We're striving again, continue to push that water south. And, you know, the bottom line right now, like I said, we're a bit premature. I would tell you within about 2 weeks, the plan, you know, we will have a little better picture of where we're at for a no kidding dry season strategy. The goal will be, of course, as always, you know, to keep releases and to at a minimum so that we can affect the ecological ban on the lake as well as that of the estuary. So we take that into account at all now, unlike we did before. I would tell you with the red tide and fish kills, I'm sure many of you are all aware of that going on the West Coast right now. We went and saw that. You know, Colonel Booth was with Mayor Holly Smith this on Tuesday evening. And if you've not seen Captains for Clean Water's website on their Facebook page, you know, you've got all the finger mullet, snook, everything is they're lining the shores right now. I know that's a tricky one to work through, and the way the currents go, cold water, you know, cold air may help change the currents a bit. It's not, you know, it's definitely not like the HABs that we see on the lake through algae. The cold water really knocks it down. It's probably more the currents that'll change and help it. But again, we don't want to exacerbate that coast any more than we want to exacerbate this coast either, right, or this estuary. So again, all considerations that we're looking at right now. But again, of course, the Caloosahatchee estuary is a bit larger, and it does need some of that dry season flows, which we are assessing that we are in the dry season right now. What I will say real quick, and as we go to the next slide, and Tim, if you're out there, I will bring you on. Well, let me go back to some considerations here. So I was just kind of rambling through it in there. Again, as you know, it's extremely complex, 16 and a quarter feet, still rising. We're conducting the dam inspections, which are great, bottom line. I mean, when it comes to the safety or risk of Herbert Hoover Dike, we feel very confident right now. Just because, again, that $1.8 billion investment, and I'll hit some more on the dike and how we've inspected it and where it's at. Again, I hit where Laura's was. You know, of course, hey, it's not over till it's over. We'd like to really think and pray that we're done seeing any more storms this year out of the Atlantic season. But I think the other one was the La Nina forecast has gone to a little bit more moderate. I think earlier in the season, about a month ago, we were expecting a little bit more of a stronger La Nina, meaning it would be drier through this dry season. I think it's coming down to be a little bit more moderate. So I think we'll see kind of normal, quote unquote, water flow or rain throughout this dry season. As we talked about, the salinity levels in both estuaries here are of course, they're low. That red tide bloom is definitely causing fish kills. Some other things we talk about with Sanibel Captiva Foundation, Captains for Clean Water, and FWCC, making sure they're out there monitoring, because honestly, they had a lot of boats that were down. Their ability to monitor was very much hindered. And you see a lot of guys coming right now, and today, tomorrow, they're out monitoring, going to get some of that data to see where they are for red tide as well as salinity levels. Yeah, they're here. Obviously, we know your salinity levels are lower, and again, acknowledge all that. Lake conditions. Again, we also heard a lot last month about how turbid it is. I've been on the lake a lot. It is definitely turbid. You know, you've got concerns in we talk about effects around the lakeside with a higher lake. So I'm aware of, you know, we have 150 boat fish tournaments that are being canceled more than likely this coming weekend, because yeah, with the lake being so high, the ability to get in and out of the canal, out of the C10A C310 and Clewiston, You can't keep it open like a free flow, right? It has to stay closed because again, the lake being 16.2 feet, which is too much when that rim canal can only be at 15 again, just like our other canals, trying to keep it at 15. It's too much of a flush to keep that open, let all your boats in and out. You know, I think they're looking for alternatives, but bottom line, the economic impact of losing an entire tournament is pretty real to those including them around the lakeside. Blue-green algae it is low right now. Again, I know we're working very close with South Florida Water Management District every day, sharing pictures, sharing stuff. I know we're out checking right now. There's a lot of duckweed near Myaka I'm aware of, but you know, algae is staying low right now. That is a great thing. And as my good friend Newton Cook will always remind me, right? You know, we're trying not to kill the lake, right? That is the goal. It is still to keep a healthy lake as best we can. And this is the time when we can try and bring it back to that ecological envelope. As said, STAs are recovering. You know, there is some capacity that we have in northern WC3A, and we'll keep moving water south. So it's really, if I look at all those considerations, that's what's going on between our water management team, South Florida Water Management team. I think from an engineering perspective, it's probably a pretty easy decision right now. But when we look at all the factors and everything that's out there, that's where Colonel Booth, myself, and us, you know, we take a hard look. And I would tell you right now, we plan to wait just a little bit longer to see what's on this horizon. Make some things. So I'll go ahead and take a question now or two, and then I will go to Tim to talk floors and or low SOM specifically. Oh.
Colonel, I'm Max Stuckey. This first question is a real question, but do they give you combat pay to come over here? We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming, but I have, my question is, if the city of Stewart were to succeed one day, as I've been urging them to for many, many years, to get an injunction to make the discharges permanently enjoined from coming through the C-44 canal, where would the Corps put that water?
I mean, frankly, a great question. I mean, it's a hypothetical though, and I don't have the luxury to work in hypotheticals, right? I'm working with the plumbing is designed what we have today. That's what I have for you. So, yes, sir. Yes, Blair.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down today and giving us at least an update. I'm Paul Lauro from a hippie group. Just an observation I'd like to share with you. Okay. I have been water testing over by the Jensen Beach Causeway now for going on, I'm working in my 7th year. So one of the things we measure is clarity. Okay. Over the last 2 years, because we've had no discharges, we have seen an improvement in clarity. And I want to talk about how important that is. Obviously, for those who may not see my point, is because of the seagrasses, right? This year, I have been recording through the summer, and now, even after Ian and Nicole, we are seeing double or triple the clarity levels that we have seen in the past when we have had discharges. Now, this is one location, and it's the Jensen Beach Causeway, Northern Pier, and you know, St. Lucie is a different situation, but I wanted to bring out to you to make a point is that what is the effect of not having discharges? And one of them is that we're seeing, at least what I'm measuring, tremendous increases in clarity, which will help to promote seagrasses, which is the way that the lagoon will come back, because obviously you need seagrasses. That's the start of everything. All right, so thank you. And again, thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Blair. That's great. Those are the observations that I appreciate. We'll definitely get with you and get more on that, because I would agree with you. That's like what we're seeing. No go. Yes, sir.
How well has C-44 canal performed?
The canal or the reservoir, sir? Reservoir is doing well. I do have a slide to cover that here in just a minute. I think a quick bottom line, we've got it at 10 feet. We're still in the operational testing and maintenance phase. It'll extend a bit longer, but we're at its capacity for right now. And it did take some, we filled up the capacity prior to Ian, did drop it down a little bit, and then took more after Nicole or during Nicole. So it's at capacity right now, but it's performing as designed, and that is a great thing. Yes, Ms. Steve.
I want to piggyback on Paul's comments because while the St. Lucie estuary was looking a lot better before Nicole and before Ian, we are seeing some deterioration now. Some of the satellite imagery on Todd's website, Ion Lake Go, shows a lot of turbidity in the St. Lucie Inlet. Jackie had a great blog post yesterday illustrating some of the concerns. So I don't want the Army Corps or anyone to get the impression that the St. Lucie is in pristine shape and we can take some water right now. And looking at your third bullet there, so the current lake plan lures would allow for up to 3,000 CFS to S79 west and 1170 to the east. So we heard that Tuesday on the periodic scientist call, and that made us really nervous because right now we're not getting any east and we don't want 3,000 west either because of the horrible red tide we're seeing there. So we would just ask Friends of the Everglades and Vote Water sent a letter this morning asking that you wait until the end of November to the start of dry season. You said yourself that the Herbert Hoover Dike is in good shape. There are no safety concerns. Let's not start any discharges until we get to dry season and see where we are. And that's our request.
Thank you for being here, Colonel Polk. You know, the St. Lucie River as it flows into the crossroads and then into the estuary and the inlet actually has been loaded with sediments for about 2 years. So even without discharges, we're getting a lot of sediment load from the river and also from the unstable bottoms. So this is the moment we can't afford to have more discharges. It's like would be the worst possible moment for those seagrasses that are struggling for sunlight to be dumped on and buried. Yeah.
Do you mind going back to the slide that shows the flows in different directions? That one, yeah. So sorry. It's just really striking to us that those two arrows going south of the lake are at 0. And I know the party line is that the STAs are full, the WCAs are full, but we've heard some feedback that actually there might be a little room in the WCAs. So let's talk about, there are other outlets of the lake from the lake going south. So let's keep an eye on those. And the Water Management District certainly has some flexibility to make those decisions.
Can I quick piggyback on that? You did say in the presentation here that WCA 3A has some capacity. What water is going into that? I mean, is that able to take water from the lake, or is that just taking more runoff from the EAA? Okay. All right. I mean, I think the bottom line is is there any capacity anywhere for water from the lake? The STAs. Don't forget the crew.
I appreciate the comment. I would just say bottom line, we hear you. We absolutely hear, and these are considerations. We're looking at everything. When you think of some of that back of the napkin math that everyone here knows, right? You can count at least a foot, hopefully to come off from evapotranspiration. You'll see at least a foot come south through to the agricultural area throughout the dry season. We'll see a bit more going to the East Coast for water supply, but that leaves us to that other 2 feet to figure out how we can bring that safely off the lake. So that's the consideration we're looking at. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Do you mind if you have a pointer, or if you don't? Great. So you just said to Gil Smart that any water that would go into Conservation Area 3A would be through the S10s. So yeah, so that's between Water Conservation Area 1 and Water Conservation Area 2, and then it would go from Water Conservation Area 2 into Water Conservation Area 3. And the Corps is in charge of those gates, not the district, right? So just out of curiosity, does the water have to come from Water Conservation Area 1, or are there like 5 different canals that you can bring that water in through?
And you're getting me off to grab my map to make sure I can look at it. But there are several, that is a series of gates there. Of course, there are other that come in. I think, but ultimately, of course, when we look at where STAs and then flow, it does flow right through here and then you're 75 down here and, I think to answer your question, there is other spots where the water comes in, but ultimately to get it down through, it goes through here, or unless it goes to the STAs, if that helps.
So does that water 100% have to go through the stormwater treatment areas?
No, I'm not tracking it. Does 100% go to the storm area? No. I mean, the water conservation, those are the original plan. That's where it does still flow that direction.
So there are some areas where it's legal to put water into the water conservation areas that's not through the STAs. That seems like a big deal. I mean, so where does it qualify that you're allowed to do that or not? Does the district have anything to do with it? Oh, okay.
It's all. It is a home concert. I mean, none of us are acting our own, but yeah, to make sure we get it and conveyed through the system, right, through the FEDs, like when we look at the L8 or the L8 up here coming to C51, the L10 also going down to C51, the FEB that unfortunately is covered up. You got the FEB right there. So that is all operated by the district. So yeah, I mean, it is a very combined, interconnected system, as you well know, ma'am, but for everyone done, it is. It is. Yes. Yes, ma'am. And I'll go back to, as you said, still protecting and making sure these are so we're meeting the water quality component for the state, and consent decree by 2025 is absolutely vital right now. But I've got more good news. I've got some good news coming here in a minute.
Thank you, Colonel. My name's Tom McCrudden, and I have a aquaculture business in Martin County. I've been here for about 25 years. I supply shellfish to the state. I also do restoration projects, and with the discharges that you guys do, I'm sitting on about 5 million clams for the restoration project over on the West Coast. We're right on the edge. I mean, any more water. I'm sitting on 20 million clams for industry. Some of the other hatcheries in the state have been destroyed from Irma and things like that. So I'm sitting on 25 plus million animals that are for restoration industry that help clean the water, help red tide. We are right on the edge. How much longer are you guys going to be discharging out the S80? I know the local, you're saying the levels, you have to hold them, but I mean, any discharges will crush me. And, I understand you can't have the dikes breaching or anything like that, but, it's affecting a lot of other things, in addition to, everything else. I mean, because the animals or the restoration animals that we're providing are going to help the seagrasses and water clarity and all the other things. So there's a lot of other things affected. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate those efforts. Those are awesome things. Blair.
Yeah, Blair Wickstrom with Florida Sportsman. And last month we heard the district, for the most part, I asked the question, wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't your job be easier if the lake was just kept lower all the time? And the answer was, depends who's, who's asking. And so my point, I guess, is how, when Senate Bill 10 was passed, there was 60,000 acres of treatment area and reservoir that was associated with Senate Bill 10. The way it has evolved is 10,000 acres. It's not enough. And so what we were told, we didn't have willing sellers. We have money. The state has money to buy land. The state, for the most part, is the party that would buy land. How often are you speaking to the state in terms of the district about how hard are you buying land, or how hard are you looking to find willing sellers? Because the state has land. That's ultimately the fix here. We just need more land south to send water. Ultimately, we've been saying that for 20 years here, send it south, buy more land. And it's kind of like we're just repeating ourselves, but we're at a point now, we have the funding mechanism with Amendment 1. And so my question, I guess, is how hard do you ever get involved with discussions to help the district, prod the district to buy more land, to make your job as plumbers easier? Because if you have more outlets to send water south, it's going to make your job easier. And so I just wondered, is that a conversation that you have at the district level?
Thanks for the question. And that's a lot to unpack. Let me help address some of it, bring it back to you. So first thing you said, Blair, keeping that lake at 12 feet all the time, would that be easier? I mean, again, I think it's a hypothetical to address, but the reality is, right, to keep it at that level, like, so say we wanted to try and get it to 12 feet right now, what would we be doing? You'd just be shooting it out. I mean, that's the only way you get back to 12 right now. So that's such a tough thing to ever try. And that's why we don't ever set like, hey, here's where we're at. You see the band. That's where low SOM is are going to. We'll talk here in just a minute. Allows that flexibility given on the situation and the current conditions to operate it as best we can for all parties. When it comes to discussions, I mean, we got the governing board member right here. When we talk with South Florida Water Management District and purchasing more land, I mean, that is all part of SERP. I know they're doing. I forget the amount of millions of dollars that are spent for parcels of land that they can get constantly. So I know that's always going on. I know the district's doing a phenomenal job getting land. I also commend Martin County for all of the amount of money that you guys have taxed yourselves on to spend for wild lands out here. That's huge. That's enormous. The contribution that has when you look at a contiguous amount of land that's put in natural, that's fantastic. But I would just say from our end, I know the conversation's going on all the time of where we're looking for our next projects. And I know the district's out there trying to buy up everything they can, frankly, so. You good? Yes, sir. You don't need that. Come on in. It's for everybody else. It's for everybody else.
Why don't we take this one more question, then let him, he's gonna have Mr. Geisen give us an update on LOSUM.
Okay. I'm just doing some quick math here. So we got 16.2 feet in the lake right now. But June 1st, we want to get down to 12.5 feet. We know about a foot's going to go in the agricultural areas. So that only leaves us 3 feet of water to get rid of. What's our plan? So that's what, 6 inches? A foot? Okay, that's 1 foot. So we got 2 feet of water now. Now we're resending it. What's that, 6 inches? Is that 6 more inches? Think so? All right. Well, we got a problem.
You're exactly right, but we don't and can't afford any discharges this way at the moment. So we might as well see what the dry season has in its cards for us. And that's what we need. Let's go to a LOSUM update, and then there may be some questions about LOSUM and projects going on from there.
Thank you. Hey, thanks. So I again, Tim, do I have you out there? Get my lifeline?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
All right, good. Hey, I'll let you guys kick off for a minute. If you want to just kind of talk through what we have, where we're headed. And then of course I can answer questions here, but I'll let you go ahead, Tim.
Sure. All right. Yeah. So I think everybody's pretty familiar with this graphic that's up on the screen now. It's just kind of the LOSUM schedule and what the flows out of each zone would look like. So currently we would be in zone D, just over 16 feet there. So we would be releasing 0 to the east, just as we are right now. And our flows would be capped at 2,000 to the west. So as Colonel mentioned, currently Lours has over 1,100 to the east and over 3,000 to the west. So you can see LOSUM will actually be more restrictive than Lours would be. But we also are looking at those beneficial uses and being able to kind of project where we may go under LOSUM, which we're really doing right now. And I think that's what one of the key takeaways that everybody should kind of think of is our water managers are always considering everything going on. That's no different than we would be doing under LOSUM. A lot of those same considerations that we're talking about now on how we want to make releases are the same ways we would consider things as we move forward with LOSUM. We just have less ability to move water. It's a little bit more restricted that way. So you wouldn't necessarily be worrying about that 1,100 coming to the east under LOSUM. We wouldn't have that ability until we get up into zone BC, which is almost up at 17 feet. At this time of year. So we've got some ability to continue to hold that water that we wouldn't necessarily under Lours. So I don't necessarily need to go over this too much more. I think everybody's pretty familiar with the plan itself. So if we want to go to the next slide. just kind of status on where we are on the schedule. I know everybody did a great job providing comments in September. Really appreciate all the interaction that we had with everyone during our roadshow at that time, and all the great feedback that we got. And that continued with the official public comment that we got and are working through right now. We ended up with over 4,000 comments on the draft EIS and water control plan. So we're diligently working through responding to all those and making some, adding some additional information to the EIS and kind of making things a little more clear. I think that was one of the big takeaways that we heard was there's some more information that everybody would like to see just to understand and make things a little bit more clear in the way we're telling how the process unfolded and those effects that we're showing in the EIS. So we're working through that right now. As you can imagine, having two storms come through has delayed us a little bit. Plus the amount of comments that we got were great. Continued the feedback and the interaction that we've gotten throughout the LOSOM process, but that has required us to take a little bit more time. So we're looking at now a completion and approval in the June timeframe, which originally was April. So we've added about 6 weeks to the schedule to accommodate for impacts due to the storms, plus the amount of comments that we've got. So we want to make sure we've got a very clear document and are able to address all the comments that we got in the draft EIS comment period. So that's where we are, still on track. As I mentioned, we really wouldn't be doing anything a whole lot differently under LOSOM than we are right now. So I think that's kind of good news that we're already using the kind of that thinking, that mindset that will carry into LOSOM in the way we're thinking right now. So be happy to take any questions on where we are with LOSOM.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Something. No, good. I was just gonna add in here. Can you all hear me okay? I think the kick is, like you said, we're benefits focused. With LOSOM, some other key things, that the top of that envelope didn't change, 17.25. That was the top of the very top of the envelope under LOSOM, just as is under LORS. So that has not changed. Yeah, great news though. Again, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. I think we'll keep rolling. Herbert Hoover Dike. So again, some good news overall. 97% overall complete. The cutoff wall, the actual cutoff wall itself. These are about to turn green. It's really just a matter of some of the embankment armoring is finalizing at some of the structures here, the S277, as well as sod, making sure that all that grass is take root. And same thing with just a few modifications up on task order 5. So, I mean, bottom line, we're super excited to really finalize this major project. As you know, huge undertaking, over $1.8 billion. You go ahead, next slide. It's not working. Yeah. It's a 25 January. I know we mentioned last month, but there's no keeping the date. We'll be in Clewiston. Make it be a big event for this ribbon cutting. So it's pretty exciting. Leading right up to EVCO for those who come to that. It's a great thing. Our goal is to get as many folks down as we can for that one. Let's go next slide. Let's talk a little bit on Indian River Lagoon South. I think the key, we have the ongoing work. We're the C41 reservoir, as I mentioned, the operational testing phase is continuing. There were some concerns about how much seepage was coming out on the northwestern side. That's what's really being addressed, and it's between the toe ditch, the embankment toe, and that's what we're working at. Making sure we get through that. That will take that year, within a year, but that's why we're capped out at 10 feet right now. It's not leaking. Absolutely not. I say, groundwater. Excuse me. To clarify, when I talk about it's amount, so all that pressure, all that weight, how much groundwater? So how much are we seeing the groundwater change on those monitoring stations outside? Is what it is. When I say seepage, it's all on the groundwater side. So nothing going through dam safety considerations. It's great. We're fine. But thank you for let me clarify. Dam safety, no concern when we talk about, I'm talking underground water, and that's what has to slow down. Make sure all the monitoring is where we expect it to be in that envelope. Well, it's just, for one, it's a condition of the contract, right? It was built, we paid these contractors millions out to meet the specs that we needed it to be at, so that we're not losing water. We're not, again, that's how it's supposed to be made. And this is part of making sure it's operating just how we intended to make. So that's really why. Yes, sir. Yeah, good.
Back stuck again. I've heard that impeding that groundwater flow where you've shored up the dike on that south end is really hurting the groundwater quality on the outside of the dike. And that the ancient saltwater is starting to come back up instead of letting millions of gallons of water flow through the dike as it did through the earthen embankment. Is that a concern y'all have been working with? Because it seems like that would make the lake fill up a lot faster if the groundwater can't keep flowing like it always has.
First, I was referring specifically to the C-44 reservoir, sir. When you say up here, yeah, yes. No, so, but the dike, what we are doing, yes, you are forcing that water further south, but it's protection, right? We don't want the piping, the stream, anything to go dig through that earthen dam, because by nature, by the nature and engineering of how those are done, they will have some water go through. The whole key was to make that more or less more of an impervious structure, not to provide structural support, but to make that water go deeper under the dike. So it was why it's 60 feet down in the center of the dike to make that water flow just go further down and away. That's how it does its job. Yes, sir. So we kind of talked a little bit ago on the C-44. Again, as you can see, 10 feet. Final kickoff, there'll be this coming January. And again, great picture of it up filled out almost to the top, but it's a pretty awesome feature. If you ever fly over, it is great. Next, I got 2 more slides here very quickly, or actually really 1 slide. If you the IDS workshop, let me just plug in. That's tomorrow morning. We'll be kicking that one off. Hang on, I'll come to you. And that's again, we talked the overall document that we're all planning on. Yes, sir.
You were going to talk about the Indian Lagoon South project.
Yeah, I was coming off. Yep. Yes, sir. A little bit that we're moving on. So let me go back. Yeah, the C-24, C-23, that has begun. That is on schedule. We are working on that one right now. Same thing with the interconnect discharge diversion canal. That's the other great one that is working. Yes, sir. Let's see. Well, it can take the water from wherever. I mean, I understand I understand your point. It can still operate. The thing is, it can operate as intended though and designed. It's just a matter of where you're getting the water from. It's always an option. Yeah, I mean, it could come in or cousin. All right. So the other bit of what I'd like to say, at least good news, is so we awarded our notice to proceed on contract 10 Alpha for the EA reservoir. It's been a long time coming. I think everyone understands, a really long time coming. It'll be it's a $79 million contract award. As awarded, there'll be, of course, some modifications to that contract. So it'll put it over the $80 million range. But that notice proceeds. So went out yesterday. I don't know, right after Thanksgiving, I'll be in a meeting to talk with the contractors. We start, and to remind everyone, that's really called the levees and canals. That's that 7-mile top portion of the EA reservoir that'll be connecting from southeast to the west side from the Miami North New River Canal over to Miami Canal. And that's this huge monumental work to finally get underway. And it won't be long behind that with the next canal or the next contract award to start embankment work. So that's fantastic. And then I would tell you we don't have a date pinned in yet, but just keep the mid to end of February for ribbon cutting on that. So again, another exciting day, I think, for us, a big milestone event. So with that, I'll go to any other questions. And yes, sir. That's all I have.
Just a quick one. With the land that we have right now for the reservoir, if they get more land, how do you increase it? You just move the wall over, or?
It's a great point. So for those not in the contracting or construction world, when I say modifications, if you ever, so we'll say once you design your home and you got everything out, and then you want to start adding other windows and things, that cost just exponentially increases, right? And that's what you're looking at. So, on a structure, something like that with it, it's inordinately expensive and it's not easily done. Right. We can only build where we own the land and the state has done a great job getting all the land possible. So. Sir.
Let's give it up for Lieutenant Colonel Polk and as well as Tim Geisen, who's online with us. We appreciate them coming here. And, you know, it's very important to have good collaboration with the agencies, both state and federal, that we're working with. Keep that conversation going.
Thank you, Merritt. I did want to make one announcement before we go into our reports. We as an organization have as membership over 100 other organizations. And it's very unusual because we don't have dues and we don't have fees, but we do have expenses. And we also need to maintain a position of credibility should we look at taking any kind of legal positions or actions. And in the past few weeks, from the Kaler Foundation, we received a $10,000 donation. So do we have a Martin County report? John? A brief one.
All right, I got a few things I was going to mention, but I first of all, I want to thank the Lieutenant Colonel for being here. It's always a privilege to have you speak to our group and come in person and be so transparent. Appreciate the relationship and thanks for coming. I wanted to talk about the interconnect. That comes up quite often, and there seems to be a lot of confusion. Of course, confusion comes with distrust about that project. First of all, it was part of the authorized IRL South project when it was originally conceived. It's in the project implementation report. It's also required to meet the water savings clause if we're going to build the EAA reservoir, because you're taking some water off the lake for the EAA reservoir. If you don't have something to augment that, you wouldn't be able to use the EAA reservoir. So the intention is that if you want to draw that water from the lake to the EAA reservoir, there's got to be some mechanism in the dry season, if the lake gets too low to meet water supply needs, that you could provide a new source, at least on a ledger, to meet that. An example of where that would have been not only effective for water supply, but super effective for us in the St. Lucie rivers in 2019, if we'd have had the interconnect, because of where the rainfall was, where lake was, we could have had about 60,000 acre feet of C23 water go to the lake and not hit our middle estuary. So it would have been hugely effective in those cases. It won't be effective every year, and it won't be needed every year. And in fact, as we bring things like dispersed water farms online that have been super effective in that basin, the C23-24 projects are all going to start to mitigate the need for that. You have to have it there if we're going to build the EA reservoir, and it does provide some benefit to us. So I know there's a lot of confusion. I'm happy to answer other questions about it after this. It's something that, you know, I think we should support, and it's going to be built. I think they start construction January or February. It's pre-construction meetings this week. On another note, we've been working on seagrass restoration for a couple of years, trying to get out of the blocks on, you know, what if we actually start to fix the watershed? How do we prepare ourselves to get into the estuary and start doing real restoration work in the estuary? Now, Mother Nature's doing its own thing, and we see how resilient it can be with the rebounding of seagrasses that we've seen in this summer, and hopefully they've persisted through these last two events. But we also want to be really proactive about learning what we can and spooling up our capacity to do those restoration efforts. So I've tasked my team with coming up with a project. We've already gotten funding. There's actually lots of agencies that are happy to give money to any suckers who think they can take this on. And my team has come back to me and said, and I love that you're here. I want to talk to you afterwards, is Tom. John, we can't just focus on seagrass. We've got to deal with bivalves. And they've come to understand just how imperative providing the habitat and the restoration for oysters, clams, and things like that are to creating a sustainable seagrass restoration effort. So our focus is really kind of turned towards what we call leucinid clams. It's a new term for me. We like them. They're a good thing. And so our group has been out trying to find suitable habitat for leucinid clam development, restoration. We're looking in substrate at where the soils historically show an archive of previous habitat as the most likely places to direct our resources in the future. So that's kind of exciting. We're learning a lot, and there's a lot of money available to do that stuff. So we hope to have a really smart and successful plan to get out there and start putting that stuff back in place in conjunction with these watershed improvements. I also wanted to bring up legislative session. I know it doesn't start till March 7th, but they get going right away after the election. Next week, actually, they'll have an organizational session where they swear in the new members, and the House Speaker of the House, Renner, and Senate Majority Leader Pasadoma will organize the new committees, and then they start pre-session committee weeks as early as December 12th. So that stuff starts to happen here shortly, and we'll be tuned into that and representing our constituents with it. And the last thing I had, I forget, so it doesn't matter. Thanks. The question is Martin County going to have a legislative delegation meeting? And the answer is yes. I wish I had the details of that to share with you, but I don't. Yes. So Diane asked if, this is for Zoom, Diane asked if people could send us their comments, questions to be addressed. Absolutely. Send it in. We've been working on our legislative program for the county for quite a while. I think it's fairly established, and our board is kind of what establishes that, but your input is important. And of course, if you want to know about the meeting, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll talk to our communications folks and make sure that they get that out there widely publicized. Diane, thank you for that question, because that was actually the thing I forgot to talk about. So I'm going to rephrase her question is, what are we doing about reinforcing our sewer treatment infrastructure so that we don't have spillage during storm events like this? So it's the county's highest priority. It has been for at least 5 years. When they talk about the board's priorities legislatively and seeking grant funding, it's like, well, septic to sewer, and then, and they don't even talk about anything else until they've put that placeholder there. And they've put their money where their mouth is. They've been super aggressive with trying to make those conversions accessible to everybody, and also to raise the money to put in the infrastructure. And to that end, this is really good news. November 11th, last week, when we were all focused on something else, we signed substantial completion on the Golden Gate vacuum sewer infrastructure. So in January, letters will go out to 764 residents in Golden Gate, which is a really low-lying area close to the pocket, a lot of water interface, all septic systems, heavily loaded septic systems. In fact, if you drive down there after heavy rain, you can smell it. They'll get letters in January saying it's available for connection. There's a mechanism that the utilities department has put in place to help them facilitate that connection. And there's even grant funding available to help buy down the cost to the homeowner for that connection. And they will have 12 months to get connected where it's available. So that'll be a huge improvement to that particular issue in a really critical area. We did several years of water monitoring in that area. So we'll have a very empirical understanding of what a difference that makes as we go forward. Old Palm City is pretty much ready for construction. We put it out for bid and it came back twice as expensive as what we had estimated, as a lot of things are. And so we've gone back to the state and asked for additional funds to help get that one under construction too. It's another area just almost nearly as critical as Golden Gate. And the next 5 or 6 are all teed up to stay on course with our 10-year plan. The beauty of that is that we, as a county, we're pretty vocal about demanding improvement in water quality from the regional system. And we're not just saying it, we're also doing it. And so in Martin County, and City of Stewart's made the same commitment and is making similar progress. At the end of like 6 more years, if we stay on track with current funding levels, we should have pretty much eliminated any reasonable septic system in Martin County. There'll still be septic systems. If you have a 20-acre ranchette that's 15 miles from the urban service boundary, we're not going to run sewer out to those folks. But anybody that makes sense, those folks will all have sanitary sewer available. Good question.
Thank you.
Yesterday about the Martin County Legislative Delegation meeting. The date has not been set yet, but she expects it to be in January.
I know we all kind of expect this stuff to happen this time of year, but it's a later session. Doesn't start till March. And so everything kind of happens a little bit later.
And do we have a report from the city?
Thank you. I wasn't actually going to talk about, but John brought up some probably good points that we should talk about because it's the city also. But for one, I'll just say that we were going to have 3 of our commissioners here today present. Unfortunately, but fortunately, they're in a what we call the Water's Worth It boot camp, not that kind of boot camp, Colonel, but the Water's Worth It boot camp where we're taking them to our water facility, our reclamation facility, kind of bringing them on board to how our utility operations work. And we'll talk about stormwater and all that. But the good news is that also this afternoon, we'll be talking about our sustainability plan and grants. So it's a way of kind of, I don't want to say call it indoctrinating, but it's onboarding for both new employees and our new commissioners. So they're aware of exactly what we're trying to do, what monies we're going for, and why these projects are important. And so you'll see the city of Stewart, as John was kind of mentioning with Martin County, the city of Stewart has functionally completed all of our septic to sewer conversions on the public side. So as far as us, digging the trenches, putting out the infrastructure out there, what we probably need to find a way to help homeowners do is those connections from the line to their home. And we recognize that it all comes down to financial accessibility. In the past, the city has had both, you want to call them loans, but smaller kind of programs where we try to, if they enter into the program earlier on, when we give it, they get a certain percentage of the money kind of taking off. So in a way, it's partial grant, partial loan, but that's helped in the future to take $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 conversions for a homeowner down to $4,000 or $5,000. So we've done that before. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because, as John was mentioning with the legislative session, something that we're going to focus on in the both this coming year and probably in the next 2 to 3 years is find a way how to help homeowners do those conversions and connections. And unfortunately in the state, when you look at it as a whole, there's still so much infrastructure that has to be laid. Indian River County, St. Lucie County, not to, point fingers, but they have far more connections to make. Little old city of Stewart, we did it in a matter of a decade. We actually got it done in less than a decade. That's great, but we're also a smaller kind of operation. So we recognize that there's still a lot of money out there that needs to be funneled into counties and cities. We're hoping that state officials will prioritize infrastructure and homeowners that are adjacent to waterways, because that, intuitively would be probably the best approach to that. But as far as the city is concerned, we're functionally complete with our septic to sewer conversions. We're very serious about our BMAP. We believe that we're a leader in the BMAP business, and Martin County's with us on that. They just have more people to serve, so it's going to take them a little bit longer, but as John said, hopefully in the next 5 to 6 years, right? So that's the good news on the stormwater side. As far as the legislative and all that, I just want to say something about the hurricane. Boy, are we happy about how lucky we got on that. And we appreciate the Corps working with us. A lot of people don't, I'm a weather geek. If you're a weather geek, you'll understand where I'm coming from. If it weren't for dry air, and I wish I could show you up on the screen, man, that would have been a big different situation. Dry air got sucked into the inflow, wrapped in the core twice, 2 big times. Once was overnight over Tuesday, and then earlier on Wednesday, sometime in the morning, it happened again. So we went from looking at a tropical Cat 1 storm, which is what we end up having. We could have had a Cat 2, Cat 3 storm with a ton of rain. And just because of dry air and this La Nina condition that's not well precedented to have a La Nina 3-4 years in a row like we're at right now, that certainly helped. But we're not counting that as that's what's going to be next year and the year after. So we were very, very lucky that didn't happen. We definitely appreciate the Corps kind of keeping their hand on the nozzle and not necessarily blowing out the estuaries, especially the West Coast right now, who's experiencing that. So the city has been advocating, obviously, as best as we can to transition from this LORS phase to LOSUM and to try and make that happen. And, you know, we were this close this year with Mother Nature saying otherwise. So I want to kind of reiterate how important it is that we all work together, that we keep an eye on ENSO forecast, which is the long range, you know, monitoring between dry seasons versus very wet seasons. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions, but I appreciate the Colonel and everybody being here. Thank you.
Jackie, the Water Management District.
Thank you. Hello, Jackie Thurlow, Lippish, local person, and your present governing board member for the South Florida Water Management District. Mickey, did you happen to get the pictures I sent? Boy, the color totally changes. Can you go to the next one? Looks like it's blue. Huh. Okay. These are not the pictures I wanted to share. Or the, I wrote a blog last night. My husband, Ed, went up in the air and took pictures around the St. Lucie River, Indian River Lagoon. Yesterday around 1, it was on an incoming tide. And it's a good example of how to see the greenish water from the ocean coming in to the estuary and the difference there. And I mean, living on Sewell's Point, governing board or no governing board, I can tell you that there were significant things that occurred on that peninsula as the hurricane came in. We had about a 2-foot storm surge over Sewell's Point Road on the road that I live on, which is one of the worst, Riverview. The water went almost all the way up to River Road, which is significant. And yes, looking at a beautiful place like Sewell's Point, all of us have septic tanks. So when that water is flushing over and then rushing out, absolutely, that is something that we have to fix, especially on the lower east side of Sewell's Point. So here is the picture that kind of shows the juxtaposition of the incoming tide to what the water looks like right now. And to the point of many in the room today, that dark water doesn't allow the seagrasses to have light. And hopefully, I don't think the Corps said exactly when they're making their decision with the district, but hopefully the decision will be not to dump from Lake Okeechobee to the St. Lucie River or to the Caloosahatchee right now. And if they do dump, my wish would be that it is equitable and it has to go east, west, and south, whether the stormwater treatment areas are quote unquote trashed or not. You know, we have to, we're all in this. Yes, we have to meet the Q-Bell. We've had to meet the Q-Bell for, we've been up against that for years and years and years. But there must be some way to send some of that water south so that the estuaries don't have to take it every time. The periodic scientist call was unnerving. unnerving listening to the people on the West Coast talk about the red tide. It is bad already in some places, like off of Sanibel, which just got totally obliterated by a Category 4 hurricane. I feel horrible for them. At the same time, you don't want the St. Lucie to take all the water. We have to be equitable and figure this out. That is my personal opinion. That is not an opinion of the governing board. And I feel that I am allowed to make that opinion because I have been a resident of the town of Sewell's Point since 1974. Okay. So 2 hurricanes in a row, 2 governing board meetings canceled, more or less. They've been put to quote unquote Zooms. And our second one, because of Nicole, will be a Zoom tomorrow at 1 o'clock. You can go to the district website if you want to participate. They've really been pared down. They have to be pared down. They're doing some great things for SEP North, which is fixing the water situation. Really in the southern area of the system. There was a ribbon cutting in Homestead for the field station. Why they're expanding the field stations is because these men and women have to serve, take care of the maintenance and operations of these new projects coming on, which is really exciting. And in my opinion, I have to believe, or I'll just jump off a building, that the more we do south will benefit us up here over time, because when it's all at some point as connected as we can connect it to get the water from north to south, if you don't have a place to let the water go, you can't send it south. You know what I'm saying? You have to have an opening. And that's what we're working on with the seepage wall and the other projects way down there by Tamiami Trail. So thank you very much. And I can tell you that at the end of the day, we're all people, okay? No matter where we stand and no matter what we believe, we are all people with families and pets and responsibilities and things. And it's very easy to sometimes just hate because we've been abused. Okay, we have been. Look at our history. But I am telling you that the men and women of the South Florida Water Management District are working for you. They are working for you. And these past 2 hurricanes, many of them, have had to, 50, 100 more, depending on where they are. They have to stay in these buildings the whole time, which can be like 2 or 3 weeks. They don't get to see their families. They don't get extra pay unless, not all of them. I think maybe if certain levels do, but the top people don't, which is fair. But at the end of the day, please support the South Florida Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers. We have made so much progress. We want to do the right thing. It's hard to change a system that's been in place for over 100 years. The way to change it is to keep coming, keep talking, come to the meetings, make the phone calls, send the emails, and also change your legislature. Until the legislature changes in this state, a lot of the things will stay the same. It's just the truth.
Jim Moyer is going to have to leave early, so I'd like to advance the Riverkeeper report.
Thank you very much, Charles. Hi, I'm Jim Moyer. I'm the Indian Riverkeeper. We unfortunately have a entangled dolphin that was discovered yesterday. The manatees, by the way, it is now manatee season, so please slow down. Please be aware of those manatee restricted zones. A week and a half from now, I'm going to be doing a manatee project with the EPA, actually Earth Justice, up in Titusville, and so we'll have a pretty good understanding of their densities up there. The water quality after the hurricane, Nicole in particular, has been pretty horrible in the outer estuary. It's not so much a salinity issue as it is just the suspended solids that are coming off the eroded shorelines. as well as we just haven't had any seagrass or oyster reef holding those sediments together. And so virtually every recreational boat wake resuspends it. So it's a really difficult condition for those benthic creatures as well as the seagrasses to get a hold that is sustainable. And that's why we need your help, Colonel Polk. It's necessary to not have discharges right now. I was kind of curious what would be the trigger for recover and when would that decision be made? Okay. So it'd be multiple years. So we're talking 3, 4, 5 years. Okay, thanks. I look forward to continuing to be the Indian River Keeper throughout the next year and keep you guys informed. Thanks very much.
Do we have anybody from DEP or Fish and Wildlife that needs to report today? If not, can we go to Paul Gray?
Hi, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I do have on my Indian River Kids shirt. So anyway, I'm there in heart. As you heard, Nicole wasn't as bad as it could have been, and we're all really relieved about that. That being said, the lake is a mess. In the last 10 years, we've lost about 90% of the SAVs, the submerged aquatic plants, which are, the seagrasses of the lake. And we're not going to get them back anytime soon. But where the lake is, and considering we are the dry season, I don't think there's any reason to knee jerk and try to do releases. You wouldn't materially change the condition of the lake by releasing now. So I think it's good to have a patient approach and just kind of see how the weather goes and how the La Nina develops and kind of let Mother Nature kind of guide us. So anyway, good meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Gil?
All right, well, John sort of covered what's going on at the state level, which is not much. The interim committee meetings start Monday, December 12th, and then they resume after the first of the year. So there's not much going on at the state level. No legislation relevant has been filed. That will change after the first of the year. But at the federal level, we have a lame duck session. And I spoke to Brian Mass' office this morning about the WRDA bill, a Water Resources Defense Act. It's going to be attached in the Senate to the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, a bill that has to be passed. And apparently everything that was in the House version is included in this. What that means is that Congressman Mass, NEPA, or is that what it is? The Northern Everglades, NERP, that's right. I should remember that. Is part of this. So it would require the Secretary of the Army to create a comprehensive plan for restoring, preserving, and protecting Lake O, which would include a plan to end discharges. Among other things in the bill, $100 million for Martin, St. Lucie, and Palm Beach County for septic to sewer conversions, as we were just talking about, and new wastewater, stormwater treatment facilities, funding for the ongoing Indian River Lagoon South Restoration Project, authorization for the Corps to use emerging technology to predict and remove harmful algal blooms from the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee, language requiring the Corps to expedite completion of the EAA reservoir, more dredging of legacy nutrients such as phosphorus from the Lake O floor, and a requirement for the Corps to log anytime an employee is exposed to high concentrations of toxic algae. So all this is in the WRDA bill, which apparently, like I said, they said it has to be passed. So it sounds like it's going to be passed. So.
Thank you. I don't see Nick. Is there anybody from the River Kids with a report?
After about 15 years, Nick is retiring from being the chairman of the River Kids Committee, and she's looking for a passionate, dedicated parent of younger children who can galvanize kids for river advocacy and be part of the environmental movement in Martin County. So we're looking for someone. She's a tough act to follow, I'll tell you. She started it. She just carried it all these years. Her girls are in college out in California, and she's ready to spend more time out there. So if any of you know someone that'd be interested, it's a volunteer position. So please contact Nick if you've got anything. And I think Nick has been, I mean, River Kids is our banner, for Rivers Coalition. They make us look really good. So, yeah, so please keep in mind and get the word out in the community.
If you volunteer, both of your kids will get into Berkeley like Nick's kids.
River Kids started in 2011. And if I ever write the book with my brother and my mother that I hope to write, I will credit the River Kids for making the changes that put us in a different direction, because they won the hearts of the hardcore politicians like Joe Negron and others who then became people who fought for things that we loved. Please give Nick Mader, the leader of the River Kids moms, a great round of applause. Thank you, Nick. And Eve Samples was part of the inspiration for River Kids too. Can you tell them that story? Do you remember it? She was new here and she wrote a column in the Stewart News. And it talked about how, they were reporting and saying that there were a bunch of old guys at the Rivers Coalition, and they really needed some new younger people. Well, the girls, they're like 9 and 10, heard their parents reading this and laughing their butts off and saying, oh yeah, Eve Samples, the new lady and this and that. And so the kids went out onto the road and started their lemonade stand. They raised $35 and it became like a joke. And then we stuck them in with the old guys. Do you remember Mr. Wickstrom? Your dad, man. Your daddy's like, no, those kids, no, they're too nice, no. And we brought him in and it changed our world. And so thank you, Eve, and thank you, Nick, and thank you, all the people.
Thank you, Jackie. And I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Blair, but I think Carl's heart came around to the River Kids and saw the merit in them.
So people always will ask me, even though I'm no expert, but I just had the website so people can try it. And really the purpose of the website is so you all can try to have, it's easier for you to go get the information yourself. Where were we last year? This is the Army Corps page. And by the way, when you're at their page here, it's this link right here. It says Lake Okeechobee. You click on that and it'll give you the prior year. So on this day last year, we were at 16 feet. 2 years ago, we were at 16.41. So we're kind of right in between the last 2 years. And last year, I don't think we had any discharges to the St. Lucie River being at 16 feet. So that's the hope. This is it in a graph. So this is DB Hydro coming from South Florida Water Management District. So you can see those prior 2 years and you can see how right now we're about in between those two peaks. But 3 years ago, we were way down. We were in the 14 level. The lake, this is the HAB imagery that I pull down. It honestly is about as clear as I've seen it in a very long time as far as microcystin. This is the microcystin wavelength stuff. But if you look at the natural, and it's not showing up on the projector, but if you look at the true color, it's called, it looks kind of grayish. And I meant to bring some slides with me. I've got this other satellite imagery that I don't really show because it kind of makes people freak out because it looks like the lake's really bad because it's false color, but it's a turbidity. And so we're all talking about turbidity right now. This gray stuff is not just a cloud or fog or the satellite reflection. It's the turbidity in the lake. And so that's, and so I had this slide with me, you'd see this turbidity that shows up in this other sentinel image. So the question is, is it stirring up that latent phosphorus and nitrogen, and is that going to create an issue with a bloom come this next summer? This is a little bit like Jackie's slide that she showed from Ed's plane. So this is my seagrass report that I'm supposed to give. You can't see the seagrass because that's the incoming tide covering it up. And so, the theme really is, and let me see what tab am I on here? So this, I put some, if you go to my website, I put some then and now because people were looking at hurricane images. I did some stuff for the folks on the West Coast, but there's some sliders on there. So this is a slider. So you can kind of see that's pre-storm, post-storm, so that you can see the tide offshore and all the turbidity offshore. So that incoming tide is bringing all that offshore turbidity into our grass flats. So, Mother Nature beats up the estuary enough on her own. And so, what I've been harping at over the years is when Mother Nature with the hurricanes is beating up the estuary and the grass flats with these incoming tides and the hurricanes, that's why we don't want to, as soon as things start to clear up, open up the gates and never give the estuary a break. Because it's that S80 C44 that's just piling it on and gives it the knockout punch. This is the salinity graph that's on there. So here we are where our salinity's down right now. I'm no expert. They'll tell us what this means, but I think we want to be up in this range. We're down in this range. So that's why it needs a break to get back up. So those clams we were talking about, the seagrasses can recover. I had Jackie slide up because it wasn't working earlier, but I think that's all I have. Oh, there's some questions too, about, can we get a foot off the lake, with the beneficial flows to the West Coast. So you can, if you're on here, I've got these graphs of this like C43, for example. And so that shows you right there that last year, because I think this is this year, but if you go back to last year, 2021, it says 539,000 acre feet came out of the lake, because that's separating lake water versus basin water in the C43 on the West Coast. So that's 539,000 acre feet. I've got a little calculator on there and I can tell you I'll admit, I'm not a scientist. This stuff is not exact. The lake volume does change as it goes up and down, but I have a calculator on there that assumes, I think it's 400. Well, let's pull it up here just really quick. If you go down here to calculators, here's a calculator for you, acre feet calculator. We put in 539,000 acre feet and calculated with an assumption that the lake is 467,000 acres. That's 1.15 feet. And so, so the information's there. This is all just info, so people can get it. And if anybody wants to say anything, let me know, but that's my, yep, go ahead.
Thank you for the information. Question. The incoming tide that's silty and dirty, isn't that from the non-beach sand coming off the beach? My natural inkling is we re-nourish the beach with non-Mother Nature beach sand that is big and granular instead of sandy and silty. Anyway, just my observation.
When the hurricanes were hitting the Bahamas a couple of years ago, I did some videos of like Green Turtle Cay and Marsh Harbor and stuff like that. So over in the Bahamas, it's crazy. The satellite imagery lets you see what's going on. There's always been going on. That's why, back in the 40s, they didn't realize what destruction we were raking. But now we got these satellites, we can see it. So yeah, during the hurricanes in the Bahamas years back, it looked the same. Yeah, so like out there on those reefs, way out there on the far side of the Bahamas, freaky satellite imagery of all that stirred up Bahamas sand suspended for a couple of weeks after the storm. So I think it's a natural thing, but let's only stick to natural hazards and not man-made hazards.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Todd. Yes, and then the guy that rebuilt one of the keys over there after the last storm, you ought to see what they went through. Oh, you hit my subject, and that's the lake and Newton Cook United Waterfalls. You heard Dr. Paul Gray, and I was just sitting there, probably wasn't going to say a thing today. 90%. Did you hear the number? 90%? When I was here last month, you remember what the number was? 85%. The Lake Okeechobee has 10% of the SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation, that we have to clean the water before it comes here. And guess what? It's going to come sooner or later. One more storm, And that gentleman right there is going to open the gates. And that storm might not come this year, but it will come next year or next year. We know that. And yet we're killing the lake. We're killing the lake. It's not at 17 feet yet. But if we were running Losum today, it probably could just go right on up to 17 feet and kill the other 10% of the SAV in the lake. Until we decide to clean up Lake Okeechobee and make it healthy, the Caloosahatchee, St. Lucie, Everglades Park, we're going to suffer. And at this point, no one's paying any attention to the lake. That's where your water comes from. The storm stirred it up. We had an 8-foot storm surge, right? That put 24 feet up against that dike. I think we should run the lake as much as possible between 12 and 15 feet. Not anything lower than 12, once every 5 years is a good drawdown. We need that. But the lake, I listen to Dr. Gray. Dr. Gray knows that lake. And when he says 12 to 15 feet is where it ought to be, that's where it ought to be. But I can guarantee you one thing. Anything over 15 feet is bad for the lake. Has to go over 15 feet. That's Mother Nature going up and down. But when you get over 15 feet, you're killing the lake. I've said this before, you guys hear it. But we got to think about the lake.
It's okay. Is this public comment?
I am Joe Giulio, Lake Okeechobee Restoration Initiative. I am interested in improving the quality of the lake. I have to respectfully disagree on improving the lake by lowering it, but I'm not going to get into that. What I wanted to bring up was an issue for both of you, for you two people, namely is this. A paper that I read on seagrass evolution showed that you have the pioneer species coming in as they are right now into the into the South Fork of the into the Indian River southern section, okay? Those are the initial seagrasses, great. But it takes at least 7 years or more of no discharges or no unusual discharges for the climax grass, which is called turtle grass, which was the grass that was here for eons, 5,000 years, to actually reestablish. And when you get that, consider the fact that when you have a turtle grass ecosystem habitat in the Indian River Lagoon, then, wait a minute, I guess we've had some hurricanes here before we messed this up, did we not? And those hurricanes did not destroy the habitat of the seagrasses. So what I'm saying, bottom line, I'll be short, is that the longer we can keep discharging, not going into the Indian River Lagoon from the lake and or from the agricultural areas, because they are basically put into the C-44 reservoir, allowing to ground seep, which is very similar to what we used to have when most of Martin County was a wetland, which is a smart idea. So the longer we can maintain status quo of no discharges into the St. Lucie other than the little rivers, the better we're going to be on reestablishing the evolution of the seagrasses into the stable turtle grass. Thank you.
Mark wasn't able to be here today, and he would normally give you the FOS report, but I think Casey
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Casey Darling-Niffen. I'm the advocacy coordinator at Florida Oceanographic. None of this is going to be new news for anyone. The estuary this week went back down to a grade level of C. The North Fork and the South Fork really look, the worst, as you can see by the colors up on the graph. But if you have the other graph that I sent, I just want to show that you can see that after Ian, we had this decline in quality of our estuary. It goes down to a D. It starts to recover. You know, Mother Nature does its thing, as Jackie has said, as the pictures have shown. It goes back up. Then we have this Nicole event, Hurricane Nicole, and it comes back down to C. Just as everyone else has advocated for, we would love to see Mother Nature be able to return this back to an A or a B, and just hope that the discharges, you know, stay at 0 for now, so that we can give our estuary a chance to recover and the seagrass a chance to thrive. So thank you all.
Merritt, did you have something that? Oh.
Today is Give Miami Day, and a donation of $25 can be tripled for the Florida Everglades. That is one of the organizations on the list. So I suggest everybody participate today.
Mark asked me to say something about, you know, the seagrasses and our fish in the estuary, since I'm a fisherman and I'm out there almost every day. Yeah, I mentioned before about seagrasses, so some people don't realize the importance of it and what we've lost. Each acre of seagrass, according to the Smithsonian studies in Fort Pierce, each acre of seagrass holds 20 to 40,000 juvenile fish of 131 different species, 3 to 5 million invertebrates. We lost 50,000 acres of it. Now, some of these are transitory fish, and some of these are permanent fish, like a sea trout. It very rarely goes more than 5 miles from its home. It's part of the ecology of the seagrasses. Then you have 31 different species of offshore fish that come in, and they make a habit of their young being born and the juvenile nursery of these fish. Then you have fish like redfish, cobia. Cobia don't necessarily come into our estuary, but these are fish that go in and out. Okay. The other fish, which is a migratory fish, like your striped mullet, your silver mullet, your Atlantic menhaden, your Spanish mackerel have been caught as far north as White City up the St. Lucie River. Okay. Tarpon, when I first moved here, you could go to the North Fork of the St. Lucie River in the summertime, and there would be 10 to 20,000 tarpon that weigh from 10 to 220 pounds that regularly made their habitat of coming in. These giant jack crevalles that migrate up and down the ocean would come in. You'd catch bluefish and Spanish mackerel all through the St. Lucie River. They're not coming in anymore. That tarpon, I'm out there hunting tarpon every day. In the years past, you know, I'd catch 100, 150 of them every summer. All right. And you don't keep them, you know, and most of the times you don't ever land them. Okay. But they're just exciting. You have an idea how exciting a fish it is as a hit. And when they hit, they almost break your wrist. And then they dance in the air. Okay. And then hopefully they get off, which most of the time they do because they got hard bony mouth. But we're not seeing that anymore. Okay. So anyway, that's the importance of the seagrasses. Each acre of seagrass had a value to the community, and this is a study that was done 16 years ago. Had a value of $8,500 a year to the community. It's gone.
Yeah, and then we're gonna, I think, wrap up real quick.
Okay, just what he was talking about. I moved here in 2011. The water was kind of clear. Every time you casted, you caught a fish. You go out under the bridge now and you don't get nothing. Just to what he was talking about.
If you don't mind, I've been reading quite a bit on seagrass for a couple agencies lately, and I know that's been kind of the topic. And the amount of light that gets to the bottom there is the number one, and these are peer-reviewed scientific data that I'm talking about. The amount of light that gets to seagrass is the number one stressor. And year over year studies have shown that's like a 15% reduction in the amount of seagrass. When you compare that to salinity or temperature, you know, those are between 0.5% and up maybe as high as 2%. But if you compound all those, that's when you get your large reductions. And I certainly agree with Newton Cook that we need a healthy lake. But we have to remember what Rivers Coalition was founded for, and what we're fighting for is a healthy lake, a healthy estuary on both coasts. And the real way to get that is that sheet flow south, mimicking what nature intended. There's never any natural lake water coming into our estuary. And we also have to remember that the Indian River Lagoon has seen a 90% reduction in seagrass as well, 58% of that being since 2009. So the number one way to restore seagrass is light getting to the bottom, not shading it out with turbidity, not shading it out with algal blooms. And the other real important factor that we need to remember is we as humankind have not mastered restoring seagrass yet. That is incredibly important. Of the restoration projects that the state has analyzed in scientific studies, we're looking at a 37% or so success rate. That's less than 40% of seagrass restoration. And a lot of that, the numbers factoring into those restoration projects are restoring prop scars and vessel damages where there's already a healthy seagrass bed. So it wasn't really talked about enough today, but we may or may not already be below what is called that critical mass. And it was kind of touched on here, where if we've lost so much seagrass, which helps clear the water, helps hold down the turbidity, and helps replenish the seed bank, if we've lost so much of that, have we already hit that critical mass to where it's that much harder to restore it? That's why it's so important in times like this that when Mother Nature takes a hit, it gives us a hit, that we fight as hard as we can to bounce back just from that initial hit. So anyway, I know we're out of time here, and we all have a lot of
Thank you,
emotions
Mary.
about this, but seagrass is incredibly.
Okay, I need to announce that as every year, there will be no meeting in December for our organization, but we really look forward to seeing everybody in January. And personally, a very special thank you to the Colonel. It's been incredible. You really have made a difference working with us. Meeting adjourned.